This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
He's Greg, I'm Nick. It's the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles. Boy, oh boy, we've got mandatory minicamp. Something to actually talk about, not OTAs. No pads, nothing crazy just yet, but getting closer to actual football. And, of course, Greg was out there today to witness everything. Let's jump right into it, Greg. I saw on Twitter all morning long, all day long, there's a change at offensive tackle. Looks like Trent Brown was playing the left side. Isaiah Wynn was playing the right side. Were you surprised, and what do you think it means?
Yeah, so we got out there at practice today, and, of course, everybody immediately was like, all right, where's number 76? And Trent Brown was not out there to start practice, which was interesting. He has been dealing with something, which isn't great, considering it seems like he's always dealing with something. But once they started practice, it was Yodny Kajust at left tackle when Trent Brown was not out there. And then there was Isaiah Wynn at right tackle, a place I've never seen him take a snap at in practice or anything. And so that was surprising. Trent Brown eventually came out, and I would say he was kind of sort of splitting time with Yodny Kajust at left tackle. That it seemed like they didn't want to overdo it with Trent Brown. But Isaiah went at right tackle. Very, very interesting that they decided to go this route. Maybe they just want to take a look at it over this mandatory minicamp, and then they'll reassess. And I think you could put a lot of things like the offense, like what are they going to do on offense? And you could say, hey, they might just be getting a look at some things right now. And then once the coaches convene here after these practices are over, before summer break, they sort of say, okay, this is what we want to do when we go to training camp. Did we like Isaiah Wynn on the right side, or do we want to go back? Do we want to run Shanahan's zone scheme, more of that, or not? So that kind of experimentation can go on. But Isaiah Wynn on the right side, interesting. If you were to script something for him to be possibly out of town at some point, you would say, all right, yeah, we're going to go forward with a different left tackle. And, right tackle, do you really need a guy making $10 million for 1 year playing right tackle when you have Yodny Kajust, you have Justin Herron, you have Stuber, who they drafted late in this draft, who played a lot of snaps in the Big Ten for Michigan? Can you get by cheaper there? Today, I would have to say that the Patriots are looking at, we would probably like it if we can move on from Isaiah Wynn, recoup that $10.4 million. They can only do it through a trade. They cannot cut him. If they cut him and he doesn't play, he sits out for the whole year, they have to pay the $10.4 million. It's fully guaranteed. So the only way to get rid of that, and it comes completely off the books, there's no proration, is to trade him. And so I'm sure that's option one for the Patriots. I talked to one NFL executive last week about Isaiah Wynn, and it was basically like, yeah, good luck trying to unload that contract. For a guy who's average and questionable how much he likes football. So, but as we all know, Nick, it only takes one team to sustain an injury, and they're like, oh, this guy has starting experience. Let's bring him in $10 million, middle of the road for a tackle. Right. To get 1 year out of him. We have the franchise tag if we want it. So you never know. But certainly interesting that Wynn was on the right side, and it seems like they're going in that direction.
That was my immediate thought when I saw this. I thought that the Patriots are keeping their options open. And the easiest way to do that is get somebody prepared to play left tackle, make sure that they can play left tackle. Brown has played that before. It was years ago. But if you have Brown and he looks at least average to maybe slightly above average in that spot, you've got Kajust behind him looking average, maybe slightly above average in that spot. It's easier to replace the right tackle. And you can put Herron there, who has had history there. If Kajust looks good on the left side, then you can move Kajust maybe to the right side and keep Brown on the left side. I just read this as them keeping their options open. And if they have an opportunity to shed Isaiah Wynn, they're going to shed him quickly. That's at least how I read it. And we'll see if this thing kind of continues down that road. As far as the play calling, I think that's the second biggest kind of story and question that people have, and they're looking at on Twitter. They're reading stories online. What'd you see from the play calling standpoint? Of course, we've got Matt Patricia, Joe Judge, Bill Belichick, also keeping an eye on that side of the football. What'd you see today?
Yeah, so today for the first time we saw the walkie-talkies out, which allow the play caller to signal the
Oh
play
yeah,
into the quarterback's headsets. We had not seen that yet.
get the
I guess we've
walkie-talkies
advanced
out.
from, Bill, of course, scoffed at the media for saying like, well, who should they be working on calling plays? And he's like, what kind of plays? Minicamp plays? Well, I guess mandatory minicamp plays are important because they actually got the walkie-talkies out and they used that. And there were 4 periods that they used the walkie-talkies. Matt Patricia used them for 3 of them. Joe Judge did it for 7-on-7 when Matt Patricia was over off to the side with the offensive line. So right now you would have to say it looks like Matt Patricia is the leader in the clubhouse of being the Patriots play caller on offense this season, which is, we've been discussing it all off season. We'll see how this goes. One thing that's interesting, I'm sure we'll talk about it more, is, will Matt Patricia be on the sideline or will he be in the coach's box where he was used to calling play? Well, no, he called plays, I think, on defense on the sideline. So it's all interesting. It's part of the fabric of this year's Patriots squad where we're looking at all this stuff. Belichick was mostly in a supervisory role, spent most of his time with the offense, and Joe Judge most of the time was just with the quarterbacks.
All right, so I have a question off of this quick here. Look, it's not about what they decided not to do, right? We're beyond that. We know what the situation is. Judge, Patricia, Belichick kind of overseeing the entire operation. Out of Patricia and Judge, who do you think? We've talked about Mac Jones having one guy in his ear, and it makes sense to have that guy be Joe Judge as the quarterback's coach. It would seem to make sense to be, having him as the play caller. But just looking at the individuals, Greg, just looking at Patricia and looking at Judge, who do you think has the potential to be the better play caller?
To me, I would have to lean Patricia. I mean, at least we know he has experience calling plays, defensive plays. But, on the fly, he's done it. He knows what the pressure is. It's completely different, under the gun. And, if the other team's going fast, what are you doing? And that sort of thing. So, Matt Patricia, he's, a rocket scientist. And, he's very smart. He's called plays before. As a defensive coach, at least you understand. You're anticipating offensive calls from the other team. So at least he's been thinking about that in his career. So I'm not totally against the Matt Patricia thing. I just know Joe Judge's track record. It wasn't good when he was receivers coach here. It wasn't good with the Giants when he had a heavy influence on their offense last season, changing offensive coordinators and things like that. So for me, I feel a little bit better that Matt Patricia can learn and get to the point where he's capable of doing the job.
All right, let's talk about the offense in general. Again, I was looking at my timeline today, and there was a lot of love from Mac Jones saying that this could have been, again, with the context of shorts and T-shirts and there's no pads, and we know what this is, but there was a lot of love, Greg, for Mac Jones, what people saw. I saw multiple people that were at this minicamp practice saying that this could have been the best day that they've seen Mac Jones have, and that he was just on point. Your thoughts on Mac and your thoughts on the offense in general today?
Yeah, I thought Mac overall was really good. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I get the feeling that I'm watching this different practice than other people. Like, I did not come away from the first day of mandatory minicamp being like, this is the greatest Mac Jones has ever looked. Not anything close. Now, did he have 4 ridiculously good throws? Absolutely he did. He had a post corner shot play to Trey Nixon, who sort of Kendrick Bourne was not seen. Trey Nixon got a lot of run at Kendrick Bourne's spot. 60 yards over Jonathan Jones. Great throw, great catch. There was a sideline sort of one-on-one throw it up to DeVante Parker, which is his specialty, over Jalen Mills. That was nice. J.J. Taylor at one point was one-on-one with a linebacker, went down the middle, did a little move. Mac tossed it right in between the linebacker and the safety. J.J. Taylor took it, went the distance for a touchdown. And then there was another one to Jonnu Smith where he made a really nice throw. Absolutely, those were dime throws, awesome throws. The rest of it, a lot of it to me was check downs, flat throws, and look, this is a secondary that is very much in flux. I mean, I can't even tell from down to down who's in the game, who's playing what. I think there's a lot of guys getting used to it. It's also sort of 3/4 speed most of the time. I will say this. What I saw was once it was 11 on 11s and there were pass rushers, there was stuff going on in front of the quarterbacks, I thought the passing offense struggled largely. I did not have very good stats for them. I mean, I had Mac Jones 2 of 5 with 3 sacks / scrambles. And, one time he scrambled and threw it to J.J. Taylor, but the defense is yelling sack. I don't know if it was a sack or not. Are people counting that as a reception? I don't know. I mean, it took forever to get there. So, I wouldn't say, I would say it was a positive day for Mac Jones. He showed a lot of accuracy. I do think he was frustrated during the 11 on 11s. There was some miscommunication going on. So to me, it was just a run-of-the-mill, regular first day of mandatory minicamp practice with a lot of new people and a new offense for some of them. And it was good. I'm not ready to, draw any conclusions from this other than Mac had 4 awesome, unbelievable throws. And, the rest of it was, good, solid.
Some quick hits about the first mandatory minicamp practice that Greg took in today. Of course, he'll have more at BSJ, BostonSportsJournal.com, and have, I'm sure, a little bit more in depth as to what he saw. But let's talk about DeVante Parker. He had some good OTA practices from what you guys saw. What he do today, and did anything stand out about his day, the first one mandatory minicamp for the Patriots?
Yeah, he didn't absurdly stand out or anything. He did have that really nice play where Mac Jones saw that it was man coverage, sort of checked to, and out and go, and they were on the same page, which was great to see. But, DeVante continues to look the same. He just looks like a mature, real sort of receiver where we haven't had a lot of those in these parts. And certainly his physical matchup stands out, or his physical makeup stands out compared to some of these other receivers on this team who are, I think on the Awaken 180 diet. There are a lot of thin guys out there, including Tyquan Thornton. But I think he looks good, and I'm excited to see how that relationship develops.
You just brought him up. I know everybody listening to the podcast, they want minute-to-minute, day-to-day updates on Tyquan Thornton. How much was he involved today, and did you see anything from him?
Not a lot. He was mostly on, sort of the scout team, watching him run some drills. I think they're working on his route running. I think it needs to be defined. I will say where he stands out is once he gets the ball into his hands, he really sort of scoots the next 10, 15 yards, which is nice to see, and something that you saw in his college film where he is, he's not afraid of contact. I know there was some discussion about that, but I don't have any issues with him in that regard. Of course, no pads and no tackling, no thumping or anything like that. What was interesting is that he got a lot of work at gunner on punt coverage, taking some tips from Matthew Slater, and including one time he got down the field and fielded it cleanly in the air. So, something to watch for him. I'm sure a lot of people are not excited to hear about their wide receiver being groomed as a punt gunner, but these are your New England Patriots.
I'll tell you who is happy. Adam Jones. He just got a segment. Let's talk about the other rookie, Cole Strange. When Strange was drafted, Greg, you were one of at least a few people that brought up Logan Mankins. Like does he have that attitude? Does he have that kind of grind it? And apparently he got into a middle of a little bit of a kerfuffle today with Matt Judon. And did it remind you at all of Logan Mankins? Did you see that little feistiness from the rookie offensive lineman that you want to see?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, he's definitely a little feisty. This was at the Senior Bowl. He got in post-snap scuffles every time. It's sort of what he does as his calling card. I will say, look, I haven't studied him a lot, and we'll see how it goes once we get to training camp. But, there are a couple times when I see him blocking a little bit where you're just does he have enough anchor in the lower body right now? I'm sure he will in time as he develops into an NFL player. But right now, for his position and on the interior, he looks a little light. To me, we'll see if it's an issue. I could be just, making a lot out of nothing.
If Trent Brown is your left tackle and Strange is obviously expected to be the left guard. Do you like that combination on the left side?
Yeah, it's interesting. That's one of my observations over at BSJ that I talked about, which is like if they go this route, because before we anticipated Isaiah Wynn and Cole Strange on the left side. Those are two first of all, they're a little bit undersized, but highly athletic guys. So you could see, okay, yeah, pair them together. And then on the right side, you have Michael Wenu and Trent Brown, which you don't get more powerful than those guys on one side of the offensive line. So you sort of looked at finesse and strength on either side. Now, if they go Trent Brown and Cole Strange, and then they go Michael Wenu and Isaiah Wynn, now they're splitting it. So now they're more balanced. Is that better for the team? Is that better for the running game? Maybe. I don't know. There's certainly some positives that you could say that it's better to have that, so teams can't say, oh, well, they're just going to run around the right side because that's their power side. So, but interesting at least to take a look at it.
Do you think Belichick was maybe a little concerned with being too light in the ass on the left side, blind side of Mac, and saying to himself, well, Isaiah has been inconsistent and I don't know if I can bank on him. And, Cole Strange, one of the questions that I've read about him is pass pro, especially right off the bat. Was Belichick looking at it and saying, putting Wynn and Strange on the left side, blind side of my second-year quarterback, a little too light. Let's maybe mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, I do. I think there's some validity to that, Nick. I think it's a good point and it's a good thought. And I think just also from when we've seen Trent Brown on the left side in his previous stint with the Patriots, with his just size and length, he just takes a long time to get around. Even if he doesn't block that great on that play, it's giving you an extra half second, 3/4 of a second that could be the difference between a completion and a sack.
Yeah, just go be a mountain, Trent. If you can't actively block the guy, just get in the way of the guy, and that'll help us. All right, let's jump to the defensive side. You brought up the cornerback position. Before I get to kind of the depth and what you see as far as who's starting and as of right now, of course, this is all subject to change. I wanted to ask you about Jack Jones because from what I read and what I see, it seems like he's getting a little bit more activity early on than might be expected. And it also seems that he's not doing too bad, and he's actually accounting for himself pretty well. What's your assessment, your evaluation of Jack Jones so far?
Yeah, I'd say, so far so good. It seems like he's sort of, again, it's hard to tell, but, it seems like he's been splitting time on the second team, with guys like Juwan Williams and things like that. And so I think, and I do think he's done well. He got his hands on a pass today. He's quick as hell. He's slippery. He's skinny. Can he hold up? And, with that frame, we'll have to see. But I think he's off to a good start. Whereas, Marcus Jones, who was drafted ahead of him, who at the last minicamp we saw he was playing more safety. He's in the red jersey, was with the rehab group. So Jack Jones is getting a chance to show what he can do. But I do think, some of the, to me, the predominant cornerback groupings were Jalen Mills, Terrence Mitchell, and Jonathan Jones with the first group, with Jack Jones, Malcolm Butler, and Miles Bryant. So it seems like they're really tossing these guys into a hat and seeing what might work, getting it on film, and then they can look at it and say, hey, what do we like, what do we not like about these different personnel groupings?
Doesn't make me feel great. Of course, we were looking at this position, and you know me, I know there are certain analytics and stuff like that that'll tell you that Jalen Mills was pretty good last year, but I just think him being one of your, top two outside corners is iffy, especially if you don't have a true number one corner like a J.C. Jackson was last season. But we'll see how it shakes out. Positive things have been said about Malcolm Butler. Can he kind of hold on to that momentum as we move forward? We'll have to wait and see. But cornerback is obviously one of the biggest questions about this team, where guys will fall and how they'll play. I get so tired of bringing this guy up at this point, but I'm going to ask you because he's somebody that people want to know about. N'Keal Harry was out there. N'Keal Harry was actually at the practice facility today. He was actually on the field. Any thoughts about him, Greg?
Not really. He looks like the same player. He was relegated to scout team. I think they're basically just playing out the string with him until we get to it. His route running sort of looked the same. And I will say he was with the receivers. I know there's been some talk about him moving to tight end. It was something you and I talked about like a year ago. What do you do with N'Keal Harry? Like, does he even fit at wide receiver? Should they try him at like move tight end? To this point, we have seen no indication that the Patriots are going to do that.
One last thing that I wanted to ask you offensively, there's been a lot of talk about the terminology. And I know that Bill said this morning that, look, we're not changing our offensive scheme. We're just changing the terminology. We're trying to simplify things. We're trying to streamline things. Your read on that, and you've mentioned the zone blocking scheme that we've seen some of early on here. What do you think's happening, like overall big picture to this offense? Just your general feel as far as terminology, some of the different quirks we've seen, no fullback, Jonnu Smith's usage. How funky could things get this year?
Yeah, we definitely did see in the OTAs, we saw more sort of zone scheme stuff, the Kyle Shanahan stuff. We did not see much of that today. It looked like regular run-of-the-mill Patriots offense. Who knows what the next 2 days bring? I think Bill was largely being honest today when he talked about, they're mostly just streamlining some things, some terminology, things like that. I do think it might be for the benefit of the play callers who are, new to this, trying to, and also the players who are largely new to this scheme, at least in the past couple of years. But I don't think they're trying to reinvent the wheel or anything like that. I think that, Bill talking about when you have coaches and players who have been here for like 20 years, it gets really layered up to they know what they're talking about, but the people who just walked in the door don't really know. So I think they're trying to streamline it. That's good in theory, and the coaches might have the best intentions, but the only thing I'm worried about is how does Mac Jones want it? Because he's the quarterback. Yeah. He's the guy who's got to disseminate it. So I'm less worried about accommodating Matt Patricia and Joe Judge. I want to tailor to Mac Jones. So whatever he wants to do, if he wants to stick with what Josh McDaniels told him, do that and figure it out rather than slow Mac Jones down along with everybody else.
Fascinating times. Lots of questions. We'll see if we get any answers. He's Greg. I'm Nick. We're back tomorrow. We are back the rest of this week. We'll have an episode for you every single day for the remaining week here on Mandatory Minicamp. It's the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles, brought to you by betonline.ag. Fastest, easiest way to bet all of your favorite sports. Be good, be healthy, be safe. We'll talk to you tomorrow.